Hi, it's Joanna again with Epic, and I am here for another installment in our Partners in Change series. And I'm here with Cindy Fogelman of the Sponsor an Iraqi Child Foundation, and she's going to tell us a little bit today about what she and her organization do. So, Cindy, could you just start by telling us what your role is with Sponsor an Iraqi Child Foundation?
Thanks, Joanna. I'm a full-time volunteer with the Sponsor Iraqi Children Foundation, which we call SICF, and I serve as executive director and also on the board.
Great. And how did you get involved with the organization?
Well, I heard a gentleman who had served as a linguist for U.S. forces in Iraq speak at my church. And he talked about the orphans in Iraq, and I was just stunned because the headlines are all about bombings and U.S. strategy and terrorist attacks, but I'd never seen any reporting on the orphans in Iraq.
Mm-hmm. Great. So it really spoke to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. And so what is exactly the organization's work in Iraq?
The Sponsor Iraqi Children Foundation has three goals. One is just to raise awareness. I learned the hard way that there isn't much awareness out there.
Yeah.
Secondly, we do what we call capacity building. Sounds boring, but basically we're trying to help Iraqis do the best job they can. It's not for us as Americans to come in and do it for them. We want to build their capacity to do it. And third, we want to do things that are like direct action. Hand up, not hand out. You can hand out food for years, but that's not the best way to help them. We can do some projects that can give them a hand up, but not a handout.
Yeah. So what have been some of the specific successes, would you say, of SICF?
Well, on the awareness front, we have done a lot to try to raise awareness in the United States about the plight of the orphans and street children in Iraq. So many of our veterans that served over there befriended these kids, and they have wonderful stories about these children. There's an American soldier who used to go to a hospital, local hospital, and he would sit in a hospital chair all night long and care for this little girl who had been shot in the head. Her entire family had been killed by terrorists, but every night the nurses said the baby would just cry and cry until he picked her up, put her in his arms, and she just slept quietly. And there are just, I'm sure, hundreds of these stories. So awareness, helping Americans really become aware of these kids and their stories is a big issue. Now, on capacity building, SICF has partnered with the Children's Village of New York, which is a really wonderful award-winning organization to do training in child trauma. And we've taken their trainers, their experts to Iraq to train local Iraqis on how to help children with trauma. And then we also help fund a center for street children, and it gives these kids a place to go, a safe place during the day. They get a healthy breakfast and lunch, and they get tutoring, and they even get lessons in teamwork and honesty, and even first aid and some health hygiene related classes. So it's a way to give them hope for their future. So those are probably our biggest initiatives.
Wow, that sounds really amazing. And what do you guys hope to accomplish in the next 5 or 10 years down the line?
Well, it's interesting that you picked the 5 to 10 year time frame. That's really all the time that we have. This generation of children who grew up during this war will be adult by then, and many of them, if they're not helped now, the opportunity to change the trajectory of their life will be gone forever. So it has to be done in the next 5 to 10 years. So what we're trying to do is mobilize as many organizations and institutions and people, experts as possible to address this problem. We are very small, but we hope to find a lot of collaborators who will help us in this effort to address the needs of these kids.
Great. So what do you hope to see this next generation of kids accomplish for Iraq?
Well, if Iraq is to have a stable future, you cannot have a generation of kids on the streets. They're extremely vulnerable to trafficking, recruitment just by plain old criminals, extremists of terrorists. there are lawyers in Iraq who can give you story after story about how vulnerable these children are. So if Iraq is to have a stable future, it needs for these kids to be cared for. Secondly, you cannot have a good, stable, secular democracy if kids don't grow up believing that this is the way you treat other human beings, with respect for people of different ethnic backgrounds, different religions, different economic class. So if these kids can grow up in an environment that is nurturing, that shows respect for other people, the prospects for democracy and a free Iraq in the future is so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you guys are doing a lot to help instill those values in young people.
Right.
So what do you see as the major problems and challenges which young people in Iraq today face?
Well, there's a big problem, starting with the fact that the government itself has not made an adequate effort to address the needs of these children. One of the biggest questions I get from Americans is, well, why isn't the Iraqi government doing this? They have all that oil. It's an excellent question, and frankly, I don't know what the right answer is. There are a lot of political issues in Iraq that we can't address. But these kids deserve better, and if the Iraqi government doesn't do it, we will come alongside the Iraqi people, the good-hearted people that I've met in Iraq who care so much about these children, even though they themselves have been through a lot of trauma and bombings and things. They are trying to care for these children, and we will come alongside them, and we will help them with this.
Great. And if someone watching this video was moved to help the young people of Iraq, much like you were in your church, what could they do to help with sponsoring Iraqi Child Foundation's mission?
Well, they can always go to our website, www.sicfiraq.org. And there are news stories there. There's information on what we're doing. There's opportunities to donate if folks would like to do that. And I would encourage anybody that is interested in what we're doing to also support EPIC and to support Preemptive Love and a host of wonderful American organizations that are reaching out to kids in Iraq. This needs to be our legacy, not war, but love.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. That's a fantastic message.